For decades, we've been scanning the stars not for signals, not for planets, but for anomalies. Those brief moments when something in the universe doesn't follow the rules. And now, the James Webb Space Telescope may have found just that. What began as a routine observation of the third interstellar object discovered in our solar system, 3 Atlas, has evolved into something far stranger, far more sinister, and infinitely more profound. For at the distant end of the vast cold empty expanse beyond Mars, the Webb detected something it shouldn't. Not light, artificial light. A glow that behaves unlike any comet or asteroid. A signature that contradicts all known physics of refraction and reflection. And now astrophysicists and astronomers are left with a single question that chills to the bone. What 3 Atlas is actually? Stick with us as we delve into the data that has just reignited the oldest and most spine-tingling question of all time. Are we alone? 3 Atlas was first regarded as a distant speck on the edge of the solar system, following a trajectory no local body could sustain. It was clearly interstellar, conceived beyond the gravitational reach of our sun, flung through the galaxy by some occult force, now wandering alone across our backyard. At first, it was treated as a cosmic novelty akin to its forebears Borisov and Oumuamua. But even in its initial photographs, something was off. Unlike the majority of interstellar objects, 3 Atlas was unusually bright, and not so in a way that would make sense. Its brightness didn't match its predicted size or composition. It glowed with an unnatural consistency. Its brightness failing to fade like it should or flare with any sign of outgassing or dust liberation. Steady comets are more characteristic of the old, which shine for only a short while as ice supplements sparkle on, but this shone with a steadiness as if power came from inside. Telescopes across the globe moved to catch a view, and Webb, with its unparalleled ability to peer inside the infrared spectrum, was summoned in to decipher the mystery. What it saw made everything different. James Webb Space Telescope, 1 million miles from Earth at the range point, was designed to gaze beyond what can be seen, to push through stars' light and reveal secrets within the shadows. Its sighting of 3 Atlas was designed to dispel the confusion. It instead amplified it. The telescope's instruments captured a centered thermal emission that did not correlate with any natural reflection of sunlight. Comets typically shine because the light of the sun is bouncing off dust and ice. But 3 Atlas showed an internal thermal signature, something that radiated out from its core. This was not diffracted light. It was emitted. The thermal mapping indicated a trend that seemed to follow no known distribution function of natural objects. It glowed faintly, sporadically, and worst of all, it seemed to cycle in intervals. That rhythm repeating ever so quietly suggested not randomness, but design. A few scientists at NASA and the European Space Agency proposed exotic explanations. Radioactive decay, subsurface friction, extraterrestrial isotopes. But the more evidence was received, the more the theories fell apart. The only theory that was left on the table was the one everybody had avoided putting down on paper. This object was capable of being powered. And as data from Webb, Hubble, and ground telescopes built up, a 3 Atlas profile emerged, and it did not resemble any of the familiar celestial bodies. Its trajectory was too intentional to be chaotic, as though it were choosing its path, curving course gently through gravity wells. Its rotation was uncommonly stable, with a tumbling regime that defied standard inertial drift. And its lack of cometary narrative, even within close proximity to solar radiation, suggested a shell or casing, perhaps something to protect it from the heat. And then the most firestorm-inducing discovery. Its surface albedo, or reflectivity, was nearly perfect in patches, close to metal, not rock, not ice, not dust, metal. The implications strike with shock wave force throughout the astronomy community. If it was metal, ordered and emitting energy, then we were no longer gazing at a natural object. We were gazing at technology. Instantly, the term probe was being uttered in corridors. Beacon, craft, even artifact. The realization that this might be an extraterrestrial spacecraft was no longer the sole domain of conspiracy websites. It was now quietly circulating in institutional emails behind secure firewalls. At least the most damning piece of evidence wasn't the heat readings or the trajectory or the strange metallic signature. It was the light. Photometric analysis suggested something sinister. The light from 3I Atlas was focused into a pencil-width spectrum band. In short, it was not a broad natural reflection of the sun, but a controlled emission of specific wavelengths. This is precisely what we do to LED arrays, laser communication systems, and beacon signals from spacecraft. Beyond this, the band included frequencies that are widely used in communication and guide systems here on Earth. To boot, the intensity of light seemed to respond ever so slightly to solar radiation, as though some onboard system were adjusting for it in real time. It flashed not randomly, but with an unearthly burst and pause. Astronomers ran the signals through models of familiar signals. What they got was ambiguous, but not absurd. Some claimed the pulses were binary-like sequences. Others postulated that it might be an oscillating power source. But the verdict was unmistakable. This was no passive object. It was doing something on purpose, and we were watching it occur in real time. As the information flowed in, a team of Harvard and MIT astrophysicists conducted an intense signal analysis on the electromagnetic radiation of 3 Atlas. The frequencies initially seemed to be random, mere noise dotted around the spectrum. But once they fed Fourier transforms to strip away cyclical patterns, something penetrated through. In the static, buried beneath the noise like a susurrus, was a repeating, ordered pulse too precise to be an accident. It was not a standard binary, nor a standard modulation used in man-made technology, but had the telltale mark of purposeful encoding. Guesswork had it that it might be some sort of beacon, a repeating signal that was intended for receivers of non-earthly design. The rest of them guessed it could be telemetry, a continuous stream of information back to whoever this device had come from. What was eerie about it was this. Whatever the message itself was, it had been static since the net had first received it. It was like 3 Atlas wasn't trying to talk to us, but to somebody else, and maybe that somebody's receiver had already heard it. Word of the finding spread quickly throughout the higher levels of defense and scientific institutions. A leaked internal report to an anonymous reporter indicated that top officials were already seeking the opinions of international space agencies to determine whether 3 Atlas was dangerous. There were counterarguments from some scientists that it was not dangerous. An old probe, perhaps centuries old, on a programmed course across the stars. Others were not so optimistic. They posed questions that could not be answered. If it's sending something, who is it sending it to? If it's emitting light, does it also have propulsion? If it's here intentionally, then why this time? The report mentioned the possibility, however speculative, that 3 Atlas was not just passing by, but was observing, tracking planetary orbits, electromagnetic currents, or even more advanced civilizations. The possibility created backroom panic because if this object were not unique, then there might be something else coming after it, something which sent it. Further research on the brightness of 3 Atlas led to a revolutionary assumption that the object was not only emitting energy, but also trapping it. The way the object's output of light changed according to how close to the sun it was, as well as its apparent lack of ability to generate chemical reactions, added validity to the theory that the object might be using a solar collection array or photonic absorptive system built into its surface. Lowe and a group of theorists theorized that the dust cloud surrounding the object may have a secondary function, both as camouflage to hide its artificial nature and as a substance by which to harness solar radiation. If so, 3 Atlas would be an eco-friendly ship set to sail eternally through vast space, refueling itself along the way from star to star. This idea is in line with existing theoretical designs for interstellar probes, devices that would lie in wait for centuries before being activated upon arriving within a star system of interest. And if the activation was caused by our solar system, then the message was received. As the world's space agencies frantically searched for explanations, one reality became more apparent than ever. We are not ready. With decades of discussion about extraterrestrial contact, our political, scientific, philosophical, and systems are severely lacking in preparation to handle what 3I Atlas might mean. There were no official statements, but leaked classified reports from the French, Japanese, and Brazilian agencies all appeared to be pointing toward the same conclusions that this object might be not only an anomaly, but a slow-motion first contact. And in contrast to what Hollywood taught us, no landing, no sudden descent in the sky, no immediate answers, just data, just light, just silence. The Webb continues to monitor the object on a daily basis. And yet, every response it gives brings two more questions along with it. If this is contact, then it's contact on their terms, not ours. Quiet, distant, unsettling. And maybe the most frightening thing of all is that perhaps what we are witnessing isn't an invitation. Perhaps it is a surveillance, and perhaps we have already been spied upon. Just when astronomers believed that 3I Atlas had settled into a familiar routine, something odd happened. Its brightness suddenly went off the charts. This was not a gradual build-up because it had moved closer to the sun. It was a surprise flare captured in real time by the James Webb telescope and mimicked by several ground-based observatories. The object increased in brightness by nearly 40% in a matter of less than 2 minutes, then stabilized at a new high point. There was no natural cause that would fit the data. There was no sign of interaction with solar wind, no collision, no fragmentation disintegration. It was as if a switch had been activated or deactivated. The flare was not just visible. It came with it a change in the thermal profile of the object, such as systems booting up. Theorists speculated on a disturbing possibility that this object had transformed into an awakened state, either brought on by its arrival at our star or from our own measurements. And if this flare was done on purpose, then it was to be observed. Later, in days following the anomalous brightening, orbital calculations by a number of space agencies determined that something was wrong. 3 Atlas was no longer precisely on its computed track. It had shifted a bit, nearly infinitesimally, but measurably. Gravity by itself could not account for the shift. Even solar radiation pressure, the traditional scapegoat for small course deviations in lightweight bodies, wasn't coming out correct. This was a deliberate move, and more ominous, where the new course took it, deeper into the solar system with a revised inclination that moved it closer to Earth's orbital plane. The object was no longer just flying by. It had, in a manner of speaking, changed lanes. Some scientists cautioned, calling it a gravitational anomaly. But to others, the transformation had been a movement, a subtle correction of path by no stone or comet ever. And if 3 Atlas could perform even crude propulsion or navigation, then we were no longer watching a relic. We were watching a ship in motion, a ship with direction. As the object came within range of spectroscopic devices on the Webb and Hubble telescopes, scientists started to identify elements and compounds that raised even more red flags. They detected faint markings of highly reflective alloys, rare earth materials, and most alarmingly, spectral absorption lines that matched compounds never before recorded in our periodic table. These were not the types of material one would expect to find in a chunk of frozen interstellar rock. They were synthesized or at least created in conditions previously unknown to naturally occur. One pattern was unknown for any chemical reaction but remarkably similar to theoretical compounds reported in quantum materials facilities. Chemicals that were thought to exist only under the influence of superstrong magnetic fields or quantum confinement. This discovery implied either unthinkable age, i.e., the artifact is older than human civilization by thousands of years, or just created by a highly advanced civilization far more advanced than ours. The material makeup shouted out louder than any message. Even if we were unable to decipher the message carrier itself was unnatural. As increasingly more evidence seemed to be pointing towards a non-natural origin, governments and agencies began to respond, not publicly, but with unmistakable urgency. Encryption levels increased on observatory networks. Research teams were covertly rediverted. An unexpected, inexplicable burst of satellite recalibrations was seen on several continents. Spacefaring nations initiated subtle contingency negotiations behind closed doors. One leaked document of an international defense group stated that 3 Atlas may not be a single visitor, but a scout. The object's peculiar shape, its stable rotation, and its apparent ability to keep working over interstellar distances implied long-term observation probe design. But if it was spy work, then what were they searching for? And more ominously, what would come next? Across universities, observatories, and command centers, one unwholesome conclusion was forming. We were no longer alone in the universe, and the first contact might not be a conversation but a visitation. Speculation dangled in the balance, but a bold group of scientists at the SETI Institute took the gamble no one else would. They radiated a focused radio beam directly to the computed location of 3 Atlas. The message contained universal mathematical constants, the periodic chart, and simple graphic representations of humanity. It was a cosmic handshake, a hesitant hello. Days passed, then a week, no response. But just when the experiment was going to be put away as another unresponded call into space, one of the Chile monitoring stations heard something strange. A return pulse of thin band, off frequency, distorted, but well timed to duplicate the original message. It wasn't linguistic. It wasn't an echo. It was a ping, a return signal with just enough variation to imply it was not passive reflection. It had been processed. It had been returned. But what surprised the SETI team most was not the signal. It was the timing. Because the response